I think we should talk about Doctor Who. Yes, the long-running TV show. It's been around for years, decades in fact. And over those years and decades, it has often been at the forefront of pointing out some of the absurdities of the human condition, using metaphor, an analogy at times. Absurdities like the capacity for violence, for avarice, for hubris, and to advise that when we meet something alien, inverted commas, it's probably best not to attack because of some sort of reflex, rather to respond by seeking first to understand, and maybe even then finding things in common, and heaven forfend, creating friendships. So what's not to like? Well, apparently quite a lot. In terms of the fan reaction to a lot of the episodes in this new season. And I'd like to explore what's going on. To begin, a couple of public service announcements. The showrunner for the new season is Russell T Davies, and I'm going to be talking about the writing and some aspects of the production. This is not an ad hominem attack at all. It's a critique, and I think it's potentially a useful critique. Second thing is, because I'm going to be talking about episodes, well, I'll try and keep them spoiler free, but that will be almost impossible. So if you don't want any spoilers at all and you haven't watched these episodes, then it may be best to watch them and then come back and watch and listen to the rest of this video. The episodes I'm going to be talking about, well, they begin with the festive one, which was the church on Ruby Road, I think, and all the episodes through to the one which is out now at the time of recording this video, which is Dot and Bubble. I'm not going to be talking about space babies. I'll mention it in passing, but I'm not going to explore that at all. But I will explain why I'm not in a little while. So let's begin then with the church on Ruby Road, that festive one. Now, I think immediately in that episode, we can tease out what is happening in most of the other episodes, not everyone, that is causing some people, well, an element of consternation. Let's put it that way around. The episode is, well, it's got goblins in it, which is fine. And a ship that can kind of hover, and there's no explanation, but that's also fine. And there's some things with ropes, that's part of the goblin's tech. And again, that's fine. Now, Russell T Davies has said he wants to place things at least within a fantasy type genre. How much, I'm not sure. So fantasy, supernatural, yes, there's still some sci-fi, but to move more into that as well. I think one of the issues that has occurred in a lot of the episodes is that when you get into fantasy, when you get into the supernatural, as I'm calling it, it's still like sci-fi in the sense that you need to have done the world building. The rules have got to be a bit clear. They've got to be defined, because otherwise, potentially, there's no sense of threat, peril, risk, or victory. For example, in sci-fi, you'll often find that, well, you can't go at that speed because the ship will blow up, or this laser or phaser can't cut through that thing, or that race can't breathe an oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere. And so you've got to stick within those rules. If you just ignore them and it all becomes about woolly, then essentially you can get into Deus Ex Machina territory, where we just wave a magic wand or sonic screwdriver and solve things. And that's weak and it's woolly and it's hard to engage. And one thing that I think has been happening is that the world is not too well defined, and it's difficult to get a sense of where the boundaries and barriers are. That's a general point that I think is hampering the episodes, most of them, right now. But that's not the main point. I'll come on to that. So in the Goblin episode, I thought it was pretty good, and you know, the acting was good, all that sort of stuff. Suddenly there's a dance number, and I looked at it and thought, okay, and I really wanted to like it. Now, the dance number itself is well done. It's well performed by the lead actors, and it's well choreographed and filmed, etc. But it took me out of the episode. I kind of went, what? I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to be as engaged with this new Doctor, these new episodes as possible. And yet, bang, song and dance. Now, it could be to do with this character called Maestro, who I'll talk about later on. Maybe this is causing the song and dance, and it's not the only one, to manifest. But if that's the case, I think we should have had a hint of it, because without that, it just took me straight out of that particular episode, as I've said. Then we go on to the first episode, which is Space Babies. And I'm not going to talk about that. The reason I'm not going to talk about that is I want to keep this video short-ish, so that hopefully you'll stay with it. And there's so much that I could unpack about Space Babies. It was such a mishmash. It was all over the place. I thought it was ill-conceived. So the next episode after that is the 1960s episode, The Devil's Chord. Now, a lot to like about that, I have to say. I think the show began to get into the swing of things, but there was also a couple of oddities in there. Well, 3 to be precise. In this episode, two of the characters break the fourth wall. Most of the time with actors, they're looking away, trying not to look at the camera, essentially, to ignore the fact that this is where the machine is recording it, and that's, in that sense, where the audience is. But one character does exactly that with the look.
Now.
And also, that same character looks again at the camera and winks. And another character, the Doctor himself, also looks at the camera and winks. And I don't know what that was about. Again, it took me out of the episode. It was odd. It was peculiar. Maybe this Maestro character that I'm going to talk about in a moment has something to do with it. Maybe we'll revisit this, and it's telling us that the characters know they're trapped somehow, being observed, maybe even in a Truman Show type situation. And but it was odd. And then we had another dance number, which was really well done. Again, it's so well choreographed and shot, and the lead actors did a great job. They got absolutely stuck into it, but it was just peculiar. It maybe is this Maestro character who's something to do with music that I'll talk about, but it disengaged me. And then we have another message, which was to do with this character called Maestro, who is, I think it's 1925, and someone speaks to Maestro, and well, this god, this vexatious as far as I'm concerned, capricious, evil God corrects this character in 1925 and says, them.
Henry, get away from him. Them. What?
Me.
What?
I'm them.
You're who?
You're who?
And I think that was misplaced. Not because it's highlighting the importance of addressing people properly, but because the focus was so much on, hey, I want to put this message in, that how we refer to each other in terms of pronouns, etc., is important. And it is important, but it didn't really make any sense. So just like the musical numbers, somebody somewhere is so desperate to say, you're getting this, it's going to be glitzy, it's going to be glam, it's going to be all these things, but it's ham-fisted. Boom, we're putting it in. And they might retcon it later and say, oh, it was all to do with this character, this god of music, or however they might describe themselves. But it's forced upon us to take us out the episode. And the them part, for me, took me a little bit out of the episode, because I thought, just think about it. You've got the ability here to be quite smart about this. Maestro, this god, and that means that we've got somebody who is pretty nasty. Would they say them to someone in 1925, maybe 2025? I think more likely, because if you watch the episodes, you'll see they're pretty narcissistic. They might have said something like, all, I'm all, A-L-L. So it makes the point of it's important to address people the way that they want to be addressed, and it may not be how you thought or think they should be addressed, but it fits in with the story. So there's a slight myopia. No, we need to put that in. It's got to be, present day. I think the sentiment is good, but because once more this is going to go in, the dancing's going to go in. It's blunt, as I've said, it's ham-fisted. Then we have the episode Boom, and I think that was written by Stephen Moffat. Now, Boom is it has some messages in there, but I thought with this one, because Doctor Who's always had messages, it's always reflected back many of the social challenges, complexities, quirks that are going on at the time that it was written, created, filmed. This one, I thought, was probably the best up to that point in sequence. And the message for me was mainly that big corporations are greedy, or can be greedy, and they will do anything for profit. And it will cost you sometimes, or it can cost you dearly. And there was some stuff about faith, but I'm not really quite sure what they were trying to get to in there. I couldn't quite work that out. And maybe that's because the episode needed to be longer or whatever. And so that message was there, but it wasn't over the top. It was visible and audible enough, but it wasn't like, you gotta accept this message, take this on board, and pulling you out the episode. Quite the reverse. It was integral to the episode and enhanced it, actually made it. That was the point. So then we go on to the one after Boom, which was, I think, 73 yards. This was the Doctor's companion, so Ncuti Gatwa, of course, is the Doctor. This was Millie Gibson. He wasn't in it much. She was in it the most. And I thought she did a great job. And I think it was another good episode, because there wasn't an apparent message. It was more about, here's a mystery. This is a little bit spooky. It's a little bit disturbing. What is going on? What will happen? Now, I think it probably could have done with it being a little bit more tied up at the end so people understood what was going on. But apparently Russell T Davies has said, well, they don't need to know. And that's up to him. So it wasn't perfect, but I thought it was really good. And again, great acting from the lead, Millie Gibson, and also the ensemble cast. So it can be done. Now, if you notice, there's a bit of a pattern here that when we get things foist upon us, like the dance, like the staring, winking at the camera, like the need to say, hold on a second, this is a pronoun thing. When it's pushed and the writing flexes around it, I think it loses its power. I think it detracts from the episode. It's not to say, as I've said, those things shouldn't be there, but it's how they're there. And then we come on to, after the 73-yard episode, this one that is just out at the time of recording, this dot and bubble. And I thought by and large it was pretty good. It's really kind of Black Mirror-like in many ways, talking about or highlighting the dangers, in my opinion, of social media and being in that bubble, and how we're interacting less and less and reacting more to what we're being told on a screen, or in a bubble in this case. So I thought that was very good. That was very well observed. And I think the acting was good. Again, there's one particularly nasty character, so that actress does a great job. But there's a bit at the end, and I'm in two minds about it, because again, I think it's an important message, but because it's being pushed so hard, it could have been done more powerfully, more subtly. And I think that's a shame. And because the message at the end was so important to have, and I agree with that, but that myopia, I believe, crept in once more, and it meant that some of the logic about why people find themselves in this situation doesn't quite make sense. These, let's call them aliens, again, I'm trying to be as spoilery free as possible. Well, they could have damaged these individuals, as we see when one person is quite badly damaged, easily, quickly. So the stuff that just either was written and not filmed, or at least hit the cutting room floor, that would have made more sense. Maybe it should have been a two-parter. I think perhaps that actually would have helped. So again, a lack of world building. This is the issue. And I think that we have to be careful of the language that is being used against fans who are finding this hard going at this point in time. And I think we have to find things in common and remember that we're meant to be friends. And also, it's very important, crucially, if important messages are to be delivered, do it in a way where people can engage and be part of the episode, the journey of a character or characters, and allow them to see the world through their eyes. And that way the barriers tend to go down instead of this bang, as I've said, ham-fisted approach.